Bickley and Marotta. Bickley and Marotta mornings. Arizona sports. The local sports leader. Bickley Blast.
The Cardinals christen a new journey today with their first practice of training camp, and they do so with a couple of very significant X factors. Number one, excitement. There's a great deal of local optimism surrounding a team that has got the kind of connectivity the Suns did not have last year. Players believe in the coaches and the talent evaluators and the path forward, and everybody is raving about Kyler Murray, who is telling the world to bet the over, and the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. could make the Cardinals offense must-see television, a potential superstar who might light up the scoreboard, especially on a highly physical offense engineered to punch the other team in the mouth. They can easily be this year's Houston Texans, a team that actually ranked behind the Cardinals at this time last year, and now the Texans are considered Super Bowl dark horses. The other X factor, expectations. The dreaded downfall of so many of our favorite sports teams in Arizona, because let's face it, Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort have enjoyed lengthy honeymoons for a team that won 4 games last year, and the credibility of new leadership has helped Michael Bidwill quickly turn the page on an era of extreme dysfunction. But now comes the hard part, winning football games when the well of moral victories has run dry. All right, today's Bickley Blast brought to you by my great friends at Chapman BMW, who make luxury attainable. Find them online at chapmanbmw.com.
Oh, I like it. Football is in the air, Bick. And I agree with your assessment. They could be this year's Houston Texans. But I look at, and I'm just looking past all of this talk of playmakers and star talent and where the Cardinals roster is compared to others. What needs to change along those lines is starting to win some games in the division. The Houston Texans last year went 10-7, big turnaround, but they also won 4 of their 6 division games. You put yourself in great shape if you can do that. The Arizona Cardinals the last 2 years are 1-11 in the division and 0-6 last year. And we could sit here and reminisce very fondly about some of those wins. The Philadelphia win was one of the more satisfying wins for a 4-win team, maybe in the history of the NFL. That doesn't get you a lot of places. We can't reminisce about any wins in the division last year, which is going to be tough. And I've seen, we talked about the power rankings that The Athletic has out there. They've got the Cardinals 4th in the division, 30th in the league. I've seen some projections. In fact, Nate Davis from USA Today put out his record projections. He's got the Cardinals upping their win total to 7 and finishing ahead of the Seattle Seahawks, who are in a bit of a rebuild with a new head coach. But you got to start winning those games.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in every power ranking that you see, the Cardinals that I've seen, the Cardinals are below the Seattle Seahawks, and in some cases way below.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be better than Seattle.
I mean,
I don't know what to expect from Seattle.
We always knew what to expect to a certain degree when Pete Carroll was the head coach there. He's not the head coach.
He's
there.
not. No.
And there's a lot of they've got some real talented players on that team.
Right.
But their receiving core is ridiculous. Can you rely on Geno Smith to be that good?
Is the lightning in the bottle dimming on Geno Smith?
I think so. I think it dimmed last year.
Yeah, and then and what's interesting too is I understand where the Cardinals are ranked now in terms of power rankings, because again they only won 4 games last year, and if you want to doubt Kyler Murray, that's fine. But that future power rankings thing that you brought up a couple of days ago, where they rank, where they project the next 3 years, that I would take offense to if you were the Cardinals, because they're as low in that as they are now. So they're basically saying all that optimism you feel, it doesn't mean anything. You guys are going to still stink 3 years from now.
Which, that came up as a potential topic of discussion on the show. And I rejected it not because the Cardinals' outlook was so poor, but how the hell do they know? To me, it's just an exercise in, we need something.
Yes,
you know what, guys?
yes.
Write me 10,000 words on absolutely nothing.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
And I wanted to go back, and I didn't do it, and I'm kicking myself, what those future rankings said about the Houston Texans last year. They were probably below the Cardinals, quite honestly.
They were. They were very close, but the Texans were actually below the Cardinals.
How do you improve your team over 3 years? Player acquisition, development, drafting, all of that stuff.
Right. Well, listen, what did the Texans do? Incredibly good coaching and leadership and the rise of a great quarterback. We don't have that same element possible here?
It's certainly
Do.
possible.
You have two, Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., you would think are as good of two potential young future stars in skill positions as you could have anywhere. So you think that would give you credit. If you believe in the front office and the coach, you think you would get credit for that. And you still have a young quarterback who could still, get you back to being great. It's just
listen, and again, if this team picks up where it left off from a physicality standpoint, when you can run the football, when everyone expects you to run the football, you got something worth gold in the NFL. And that's what the Cardinals did, and they did it against the Eagles on the road. They did it against the Steelers. The last month of the season, nobody wanted to face that team because you were loaded up with bruises at the end of the game. So if they're exactly that kind of team with James Conner, and now you're putting in a guy that might be a transcendent generational type talent at wide receiver, well, you don't have to be, a football guru to understand where that might go.
By the way, I looked up the piece from last year. They had the Texans tied for 29th.
Wow.
The Cardinals 32nd. So, hey, they're moving up.
Wow. And now they're like considered a model franchise.
Yeah. The Texans, by the way, this year 6th. In their 3-year outlook, they went from 29th to 6th in 1 year.
in just one of those 3 years.
So that's why, future power rankings, please. You can't even predict what's going to happen this year, let alone what's going to happen 3 years from now.
It's just yet another, though, national view of the Cardinals as they don't think much. It's not even that they don't think they're much of them right now. It's like they don't even give them any credit for being back on the right track.
Which, knowing what we know about the Jonathan Gannon regime and how this team bought into it last year, I think that sits fine with them. Like, go back to Big 12 Media Day. ASU was picked to finish 16th in a 16-team conference. And Kenny Dillingham, and I have no problem with Kenny Dillingham saying this at Media Day. Yeah, we pay attention to that stuff. We mark it down. I don't think this group of Arizona Cardinals really gives much of a concern at all what the outside thinks.
It's just weird, though, that Gannon and company don't get any credit, and yet a big talking point offseason is, oh, my goodness, Washington hired Cliff Kingsbury. Their offense is going to be so good this year. Yeah. Like, Cliff Kingsbury somehow is getting more enthusiasm and credit.
Unbelievable.
I read something about the Commanders and that hire, and one of the players expected to just jump off right away is Jaden Daniels. And the reason why they said, one of the reasons why they said that was, look what Cliff Kingsbury did for Kyler Murray. He threw for over 3,700 yards in every healthy season and was the top-ranked rushing quarterback for much of that time. I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
That drives me insane, by the way. It's just people who are just looking at that as a huge plus for the Commanders. Here's an example. Let me give you one last example of just not only just the misinformation that's out there about the Cardinals, but just the ignorance of the information that is out there when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, right? Okay, so here's a national website that put together 5 players in new cities to watch, okay? Kirk Cousins is 1, Saquon Barkley. Hollywood Brown is 3. Let me read you the paragraph. Tell me what's wrong with this paragraph.
Okay.
Hollywood Brown. The speedster struggled to find consistency in Baltimore's run-heavy offense, and Kansas City struggled to find receivers who could reliably catch the ball. This should be a nice match. No mention of his year in Arizona.
It's
Years.
It's
Years.
unbelievable.
Bears.
It's like Kingsbury, like they still just think of him as like from Texas Tech.
Right.
It's like the stuff that happens in Arizona just exists in a
Doesn't
parallel
register.
weird universe.
Yeah, right?
And look,
Yeah.
I'm not
My
going to,
God.
since he's gone, I'm not going to bash on Hollywood Brown now and say he was bad. He was underwhelming here. I mean, is that the correct adjective?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's actually a potentially a great acquisition for Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because Patrick Mahomes needs somebody that can catch the ball. And one of the things that stood out to me about Hollywood, his hands were better than I thought they were.
Okay.
But he underwhelmed in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, and there were any number of balls that were really he didn't come up with the hard, tough catches.
He was
late.
never the big play receiver
Never.
that we were
No.
promised.
No.
That is true.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.